Imagine a people fleeing a tyrannical king, a ruler so cruel that his own subjects prayed for the earth to swallow them whole, rather than serve him another day. One night, under the cover of darkness, they vanished, leaving behind a city surrounded by walls. Walls that were never meant to keep enemies out, but rather to keep them in. Where did they go? And how does their desperate escape tie into the history of Ghana's tallest mountain? Afadjato, located in the Volta region of Ghana, is strategically positioned near the country's international border with Togo. The majestic mountain, situated adjacent the villages of Laitewote and Bledi Bogame, is an integral part of the Agumache range, a sub-range of the much larger Equatorial Togo ranges. Standing at a reported 885 meters or 2,904 feet, that's above sea level, it is said to be the highest peak in Ghana. Well, for now, anyway, there's some controversy surrounding that, but that's a conversation for another day. Today, we are focusing on the resilient story of the Ewe people and how this magnificent mountain got its name. Our story starts in 16th century Togo, specifically a town called Uche. I believe this town still exists in present day. It is now a prosperous and most importantly, free city. However, during the time our story takes place, they were ruled by a terrible tyrant. His name was Agokwali. King Agokwali was one of those people who was just needlessly cruel. He would often assign cruel and almost impossible tasks to the people. And like all tyrants, King Agokwali was paranoid about his people leaving him. I mean, a king is no king without subjects. So to ensure that his reign remained untouched, he compelled the people to build what he called a monumental sacred enclosure. But what it was in truth was essentially a tall, rough wall around the entire city, meant to keep the people trapped inside. The people were compelled to build their very own prison. They were forced to build the wall using mud that was mixed with fragments of glass, rock, and thorns, which would inflict so much pain and even injury to the people. He didn't care. Like I said, he was just needlessly cruel. And those who failed to obey or fulfill Agokwali's demanding and honestly demeaning task were subject to even more severe punishment. So in truth, there was no choice. They had to do it. Like I said before, Agokoli was paranoid, but he wasn't wrong to be paranoid. His people were actively trying to escape him. I mean, you probably would too if you were living there. Before the wall had been built, the local men, anytime they would go out for whatever reason, be it hunting, foraging, or trading, they would low-key be scouting for a place that they could inhabit if they escaped their where they currently lived. Eventually, they found such a place. It was near a waterfall, and they say where there is water, you can easily survive over there. And it was also on elevated ground, which meant it was great for defending against enemy forces if ever there was the need. Now that they found the place, it was time for an escape. So how did they do this? Looking through the interwebs, right, what I found was that an elder in the town called Tikli asked the women to dispose of all the wastewater from their daily chores at a particular spot. At a particular spot on the wall. After some time of consistently disposing of the wastewater at that spot, it softened the mud wall enough that Tikli was able to thrust a sword, which we call adekui, into the wet mud to create a hole that was large enough for the people to pass through without being noticed by the guards. That's the story I got on the internet. However, what I got for the specific area around Afadjato, from the horse's own mouth, which in this instance is the local, it was a slightly different story. The story was that the people stealthily carved sticks, and when the opportunity presented itself, they used the sticks to climb the wall and escape the cruel tyranny in which they lived. To confuse the king's guards, who they knew would definitely come looking for them once their escape was discovered, they decided to march to safety backwards. So if one decided to track, he would see footsteps that looked like they were walking towards Moche rather than fleeing. So all efforts to pursue them consistently led the guards back towards Moche. Brilliant plan, right? It worked. And once they settled into their new town, they resumed their farming activities, planting a variety of crops. Of all the types of plants that were planted, the garden egg performed the best. It was like the land was specifically created for growing garden eggs. And so, they decided to name their new, safe, cruelty-free abode Laite, meaning stick climbing, as a tribute to the method with which they escaped, climbing the wall using a stick. The second part of that name meant this land is good for growing garden egg, which was the typical way that places were named at the time, right? They look at a situation or a plant or something that was conducive, and then they used that to name the place. Now, over time with mingling and colonization, these names were shortened and anglicized so that foreigners could better pronounce them, leading to the town's present-day name, Laite Wati. Tree climbing to a land that is good for growing gardening. So, how does this tie in with Afadjato? When the people settled in Laite Wati, they were free from tyranny, but were now faced with a new kind of danger. Their wild animals. There was a dispute between the new human inhabitants and the existing old animal inhabitants. The people found themselves under constant attack. To solve the issue, they decided to chase the animals across a large mountain and help them along in finding a new place for themselves, right? In those days, people didn't have clothing like we do today. They would cover their most delicate parts with animal skin, leaving the rest of their body bare, exposed. The mountain that they chased the animals across, it happened to be one full of what I can only describe as some version of poison ivy. While chasing the animals across, they ended up like excessively itching all over them. It felt like they were being attacked by the mountain via the plants. The people at the time, very superstitious and without any formal education, did not know that it was just a type of plant that was going on. It felt to them like a retaliation from Mother Nature for chasing the animals off. So in order to broker peace, I guess, they decided to stop chasing the rest of the animals away, and they found a way to live in peace with the remaining animals. I'm unsure how this was done, but that's the information that I received. It was then that this giant mountain was given the name Afadjato, meaning war against the itchy plants. However, that V sound is not in the English alphabet, and it was also difficult for the foreigners to pronounce. So once again, the name was anglicized to Afadjato. So that is the story of a sect of the Ewe tribe and how they came to be in Laite Wati, and the role that Mountain Afadjato played in their settlements. Centuries later, I find myself standing at the foot of the same mountain. I'm going to just give you a short recap of my trip, my hike to Afadjato. So I went on the trip thinking it was going to be an easy walk. I consider myself to be a pretty fit person, so it should be easy peasy, right? I didn't even bother wearing sneakers because I walk in slippers all the time and it's not a problem. But that day, I learned the difference between a walk and a hike. 5 minutes into the hike, I found my breathing was already getting labored. The terrain was so steep and rugged, and by the time we're halfway there, I was literally hyperventilating. It was so bad that one of the hikers had to like help me do some breathing exercises just to get me to like calm down. And well, it actually helped. Thankfully, the specific guide that we went with, he let us take as many breaks as we needed, so it wasn't as strenuous as it could have been. When we finally got to the summit, it felt so exhilarating. I felt like I had accomplished a true feat. But interestingly, opposite the mountain was what looked like an even taller mountain. They call it Mountain Dodo. So the question then arose, how is this other mountain taller if I'm supposed to be standing on Ghana's peak? Upon asking our guide, the response that I was given was that it was a mountain on top of another mountain, which formed a range, so it didn't count. I mean, we'll take the explanation like that, right? So after much rest, we started our descent. And as expected, going down was much easier than going up, except for how slippery the terrain was. I wouldn't advise you go there at the height of the rainy season, because even though at the time we went, the rains had calmed down, the place was still so slippery. Many of the hiking, like many of those in the hiking group fell, slipped. So I can only imagine how much more slippery the place is during the rainy season. I slipped a few times, but I didn't fall, thankfully. I found my legs visibly shaking, like during the descent, right? It felt like the most grueling leg day of my life. And I'm no stranger to resistance training. I've had many a leg day. But this was something different. By the time we got to the end of the hike, I was so proud of myself. I felt like I had truly conquered Afadjato. Afterwards, we went to cool off at a nearby waterfall called Waterfalls. That day we didn't see any, but I'm told that often there are rainbows over the waterfall. I was kind of bummed that I didn't get to experience that, but it's whatever. And from time to time, a guy would like shout at the waterfall, and I was like, what's going on? Why is this man just randomly shouting, right? And he told me about the legend of how it's believed that the more people are in the water shouting, the more water falls down. I have no way of testing this legend, but that's what they believe, and we'll take it like that. Yeah, so that was the end of the trip to Volta region. And